Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Tiffany Evans, and I'm an educator at the St. Louis Zoo. Happy Monday. And do you know what week it is this week? For the zoo world, it is a very, very special week. If you have any idea of what is going on this week, go ahead and type it in the chat box. We have a very, very special surprise today. We have some guests from the Insectarium. They're going to be sharing some things with you and things that they are working on. Somebody put it is Zookeeper week. It is. It is National Zookeeper week. So this week we are celebrating our zookeepers and what an amazing job they have. Today we're going to be going to the Insectarium, which is so exciting. It's one of my favorite places in the entire zoo. Now, if you have been to our Insectarium, go ahead and type in the chat box, what is your favorite animal to go see in the Insectarium? And if you have not been to the Insectarium, go ahead and type in the chat box an insect or an arachnid, some kind of invertebrate, some small animal without a backbone that you like. Somebody likes the American burying beetle. I just saw that. Ooh, walking sticks, African millipedes. International Tiger Day is coming up. I see that. The butterfly house, the butterfly dome is amazing. It's really hard to choose. Like I said, it is one of my all-time favorite places in the zoo to go to. I do love the butterfly dome because it's really peaceful and it smells so good with all the flowers. But my favorite animals to go see in the Insectarium are the spiders. I love spiders. And if you didn't catch Allison Mauser's webinar on spiders, you can go to our website, STLZOOm.org, and check that out because she recently did a webinar on spiders. Now, I am at my home today, so I do have my zoo mask, but it is not over my nose and mouth because I'm not sharing space with anybody. At the zoo, everyone, including staff and including our visitors, are supposed to wear a mask over their nose and mouth. So when we go live to the Insectarium in just a few moments, you will see they'll have their mask on their face. We are going to get ready to go live behind the scenes at the Insectarium. So how amazing is that? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that you can interact with keepers at the Insectarium. Now remember, if you have questions for them, please put them in the chat box. I will read those questions to them. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Welcome to the Bayer Insectarium here at the St. Louis Zoo. I'm really excited that we get a chance to chat with you all here today about what we do here in the Insectarium and also maybe give you guys a little bit of an idea of what we've been doing over these last few months. I know our building has been closed to the public for a while now, but that doesn't mean that the keepers aren't here every single day taking care of all of our animals here in the Insectarium. Overall, we probably have well over 100 different species of different invertebrates. So that's everything, every kind of animal that doesn't have a backbone. And within all those different species, we take care of thousands and thousands of individual animals. So it's a pretty busy job. Daily, we have to make sure that our animals are fed and cleaned and have access to everything that they need in order to live their lives and to lay eggs and reproduce. And it's also a job that requires a lot of very fine attention to detail. We work with a lot of very small animals and have even smaller babies. So we do have to take a lot of care in what we're doing and take our time with what we do every single day. Now, it's about 10 a.m. here at the Insectarium, which means we're kind of right in the middle of our morning routine. You can kind of see behind me here some of our back area. This is kind of where we house all of our animals that are not out on display where you would normally be able to see them. But at 10 a.m., we're usually right in the middle of feeding our veggie eaters. So in the back here, we've kind of divided up our animals into different areas, depending on what they eat or what kind of environmental conditions they do best in. And I wanted to talk to you, at least for starting off, about some of our veggie eaters. Now, I heard that some of you had some really cool favorite animals, but I didn't hear anybody give a favorite roach. And I think I want to start off with what my very favorite roach here in the Insectarium is. So I'm going to go grab that and hopefully we'll be able to give you guys a closer look. You may wonder, well, how can someone have a favorite roach? Aren't they all, you know, pests and things that you don't want to have around? The answer is, honestly, only a handful of roach species are actually considered pests. Most of them just live their lives eating vegetation or fruits or whatever it may be in the forests and the jungles and wherever else they may live. My very favorite roach, and I'm going to stand up here and get closer to the camera so you guys can see. This is called the Domino Roach. And hopefully you guys have a good enough view to see why it's called a domino roach. It's got these really cool white spots on this black body, and that makes it look like a domino. Now, these guys are not pests. I love them because I think they're super, super cute. They're very friendly. They like to live in groups, so they're very gregarious. And they pretty much just eat decaying leaves and fallen fruits on the forest floor in their native India. And apologies if I'm not holding my hand super straight, but these guys are from India, and what makes them extra cool is that, like I said, they are fruit and vegetation eaters, so we feed these guys every day, but their appearance is believed to be a form of mimicry. There is a similar looking beetle that's a very, very distasteful beetle. If something were to eat it, like a bird or you know, another animal, it would taste really bad and they'd spit it out right away. For these guys, they don't taste bad. They would be a pretty good meal, but they use mimicry, and by looking like that other beetle that doesn't taste very good, they hopefully will have those animals leave them alone. So they're completely harmless. They would be a good snack, but they use that mimicry to make themselves seem like something that's not going to taste very good. Now you can kind of see, I hope, that this roach's antennae are moving. This roach is an insect. Like I mentioned, we work in the Insectarium, but we don't just take care of insects in this building. This happens to be an insect, and we know it's an insect because this roach has 6 legs. It's got 3 body parts, and it's got a hard exoskeleton. So that's kind of the difference between an invertebrate and a vertebrate, is that invertebrates, their skeleton is on the outside of their body. Sometimes it's hard, like an insect. Sometimes it's soft, like a jellyfish. But all of their exoskeletons or their skeletons are on the outside of their body.
Okay, we had a question from one of the participants. They're asking, is a roach a type of beetle or is it something separate?
That's a great question. So roaches are something separate. All insects are divided up into different orders, basically. So roaches are most closely related to other roaches, but also things like termites. So a beetle is a different kind of insect, and they're not super closely related, but yeah, they're totally different types of insects. So hopefully you guys can all see. And if you can't hear me, please let me know. This is the first time we've done something like this in the back. So hopefully everyone will be able to see and hear as best they can. But this first guy, I just wanted to give you a chance to look at a really, really cool roach. Now, like I said, this is an insect, but we have lots of other veggie eaters that I want to show off today and other animals. So I'm going to show you guys another veggie eater that's not an insect. So you might already be able to see with my camera here. So this is another animal that we take care of here in the Insectarium. Now, I mentioned that insects have 6 legs. I think it's pretty clear that this animal has way more than 6 legs. This is one of our giant African millipedes. And a millipede is an invertebrate. but it is not an insect. I see some questions about, is this a centipede? Is this a millipede? This is a millipede. And a centipede is an animal that's related to millipedes, but they are pretty different. Millipedes, like I said, are veggie eaters. This one likes to eat rotten fruits, same as the Domino Roach. These guys are from Central Africa. They live in the forests and like to eat anything that's fallen on the forest floor. Here we feed them a mix of fruits and veggies, and also keep them in homes that give them lots and lots of basically soil and decaying leaves to live in, because they eat that stuff and they also need to bury in order to lay their eggs and to grow, to molt. Kind of like a snake sheds its skin. A lot of invertebrates, most invertebrates actually have to basically molt in order to grow and in order to get bigger. Now, I saw some questions about how to tell a centipede apart from a millipede. And the answer to that is a couple different things, really. Millipedes are not venomous the way a centipede is. Centipedes are actually predators. They have a special venom that they use to catch other animals. Now, depending on the size of the centipede, that could be something as small as another insect or as big as maybe a mouse or something like that. Millipedes don't have venom, but they do have poison. Now, when I say that, what I mean is that millipedes, if you were to try and eat one, it would taste really, really bad. So the Domino Roach doesn't have any defenses, even though it pretends to be an animal that tastes bad. These guys actually do taste really, really bad. So they don't have to move very quickly. They know that if something were to try to eat them, you know, in Africa, it could be a monkey, it could be something else, that they would taste really bad and they'd get spit out right away. Now, it doesn't hurt me to hold this millipede because I'm not going to be eating her. I'll wash my hands when I'm done holding her just in case. But they actually sort of excrete a little bit of that poison. That it's like a liquid, basically. If they feel threatened or if they feel like they need to protect themselves. Sometimes when they need to protect themselves, they'll also roll into a pretty tight little ball. You can see here that she feels pretty comfortable because she's exploring my hand. She's not rolled up, and she's waving her little antenna all around. So she's really sensing her environment right now and is kind of exploring my hand. But like I said, these are not insects. They are their own group of animal called millipedes, closely related to the centipede, but centipedes are venomous. Their bodies are also pretty differently shaped. Most centipedes are pretty flat. Some millipedes are kind of flat too, but you can see the difference between this particular millipede. She's pretty round. She's got kind of a very round body. Centipedes are, in contrast, pretty flat. The other thing is with their legs. Millipedes have way more legs than a centipede does. This might not be something you'd be able to tell right away, especially if you're getting a pretty good look. But insects have 3 main body parts. Millipedes have many, many, many body parts, many, many segments. And on each of these segments, they've got 2 pairs of legs. A centipede has many segments as well, but on each of their body segments, they only have 1 pair of legs. So if you're able to get a close look and you're not in danger of, you know, a centipede running up to you and you're able to keep a safe distance, those are some of the things that you can look for. It's just the way the legs, how many legs each animal has on their segment. So you can see she's pretty active right now. And I think I'm probably going to stick her back with the other millipedes so she can get her breakfast. They were all, like I said, fed this morning. So as I put her away, I do want to introduce Glenn, who's one of the keepers here. And he's going to talk to you about some of our cool, exciting, and very, very fascinating conservation projects. So I'll give you guys one more look, and then I'll turn it over to Glenn.
Hi there, good morning everybody. As Kayla said, my name is Glenn and I'm just one of the many bug keepers here at the Insectarium. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that we do to help save and keep these guys going in the wild as best we can. So, believe it or not, one of my favorite invertebrates, so not even an insect here, is called our snails. Besides being very cute and carrying their home with them, they're actually one of the groups of invertebrates that are disappearing across the world faster than any others. So our zoo has been working with one species of snail called the Tartula snail for about the last 30 years. And believe it or not, they live in these little, almost shoebox-like things. So a lot of conservation that you see around the world, they have big enclosures or they work out in the wild. We're able to do a lot of conservation in these little boxes. And so right now, I'm just holding up one of the boxes with our snails in it. But we have about 40 or 50 of these containers with as many sometimes as 1,000 or 2,000 of these animals going. And while these snails are pretty small, I'm going to open it up so you guys can have a closer look. So they're pretty small, and they're kind of brown, but they do have some nice stripes on them, so they are kind of pretty. They're not brightly colored, but these guys are very important. These guys come from Tahiti, and this group of snails, Tartula snails, are found all over the Pacific. But snails are very important on islands because naturally there are no worms on islands. And worms, if you don't know, help break down the soil and make the soil good for plants to grow and things like that. So these snails serve the same purpose. What happened with these guys is we actually, and why they started disappearing and why we started working with them, was a giant African land snail, a snail probably the size of my fist, was introduced as a food item into French Polynesia. And to combat that one, once it became a problem, they introduced another snail that likes to eat snails. And instead of eating the big pest snail, they actually went through and started eating all the native snails. And so that snail that was introduced is called a rosy wolf snail. And what they do is something very interesting. They actually find a slime trail that these snails lay, and then they follow it along until they find the snail, and then they eat that snail, basically shell and all. Well, these snails, since they weren't native and had no predators to help control them, just absolutely decimated the native species. So in about a 10 to 15 year period, 75% of the snail species went extinct. And so there were some scientists doing some studies, and they actually noticed this going on. And so they brought these snails in so we could actually make sure that they were still around. And so for about 25 years or so, we've been raising these. And in the last 5 years, we've been reintroducing them back to the same valley that they were taken out of on Tahiti, in the mid-1980s, which is a really cool story. And hopefully we can continue to do that until these guys are found on their own and doing well. But, I'm going to make my little snail joke that snail and conservation moves at a snail's pace. So it's real slow, so we can't expect overnight success. But like I said, snails are cool. They're fun. And these guys get cleaned and fed twice a week. Yeah, if you can see, they also poop a lot. So we have to clean their containers because they won't clean after themselves.
Lynn, we have a couple questions. So one question is, how big do Tartula snails get? And the next question is, what is the largest snail?
So those are great questions. So right now, what you're seeing up here, up top, for this species is as big as it gets. It's about 3/4 of an inch, anywhere for the adult. Down here, right where my finger is actually a little baby snail. And so when they're born, they're kind of little. So some species of Tartulas will get almost twice as big as this. Not quite, but almost. So they're not necessarily great big giant snails. The largest snails, and there's a number of species of them, we call them giant African land snails. And literally they can get like 2 pounds. They can get super, super heavy. And like I said, the shell of some of these things are bigger than my fist. And if it was in my hand, it would be bigger than this whole plate that I'm holding up. So they can get really long and really big. And so, you know, some places like to eat invertebrates, which isn't like, we don't do that, you know, in our culture, but it's not uncommon around the world for people to eat insects and invertebrates. And so you have a big snail that has a lot more meat to it. There's going to be a lot more opportunity, you know, for those guys to raise. And Kayla was very nice enough to go get me a few. So if you can't see in here, or maybe I can open the top so it's a little easier to see. So here we have the Partula snail. Here we have the rosy wolf snail. And then here we have a giant African land snail. And so this is about as big as they get on Tahiti, but this species can get at easily two times, maybe even almost 3 times larger than that. Just for whatever reason, whether it's nutrition or what environment on the islands, they don't get as big. But these are what were introduced. So you can see how much bigger this guy is than this, and then how much bigger this one is than the Partulus. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of how large some of these things can get. So that's
awesome. We have one more question for snails. So when snails are born, do they already have a little shell? It says, I know their shell grows with them, but do they have them right after they hatch?
So yes, the snails, when they hatch, will have little shells. But what's different is some snails have, they hatch out from eggs. Well, technically they all hatch out from eggs, but some are like live-bearing snails. So the Partula snails actually, you know, hatch out a baby inside, and then out pops a little snail already formed with their shell. So yes, they all have them, and then they will grow with them through their lifetime, depending on how big they're going to get. So that makes them a little bit different than like things like slugs. Any other questions on snails? No?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, then I'm going to pass you back to Kayla again, and she's going to talk to you about another conservation animal that we work with.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Hi, everybody. So snails are super, super interesting. I'm glad that we had a chance to talk to you about them here today. What I would like to talk to you about right now is another of our conservation species. So like Glenn said, we have a very active program that's focused around helping breed and then reintroduce Partula snails. We have another program that focuses on a similar mission, but this one focuses on a species of beetle. So I think there was a webinar that already happened through the education folks that maybe mentioned this. And I think it was someone's favorite animal even too. So right here, what I have in this little box is an American burying beetle. This beetle is an endangered species. It was actually put on the endangered species list back in 1989 because this beetle used to be found throughout most of the eastern United States. There's about 35, 36 states. And around the time that this was put on the endangered species list, people had been surveying and trying to find these beetles and realized that they weren't finding them anywhere throughout any of these states. And eventually, they did find a few populations, some in Nebraska, some in a few other Midwestern states, one very separate population in Rhode Island, but it was much, much, much smaller of a range than it ever was before. So here at the St. Louis Zoo, we decided that we wanted to find them or see if they were still in Missouri. So there hasn't been any found in Missouri for a really long time. And we decided that we were going to try and survey pretty thoroughly throughout the state to see if we could find any in Missouri. And we figured, you know, there's got to be some. There's got to be some. We don't know how well this state has been surveyed. We'll find. Well, the answer is we did not. We did not find a single American bearing beetle. And so we decided that we wanted to try and raise these beetles and eventually reintroduce them back into Missouri. So all of these beetles that we raised here, I'm holding up the box so you can see it. They live by themselves in this container. This is their home because we need to keep track of every single individual. This list label here tells us who this beetle is, it tells us who their parents are, who their grandparents are, it tells us if it's a boy or a girl. And we need that information because we do breed these beetles. And what's interesting about these beetles is partly comes from their name. They're burying beetles. I'm going to give you guys a closer look. So they're called burying beetles because these beetles bury their food or what they use to raise their babies. I am really a fan of these beetles because most beetles, and I'll try and get closer so you guys can get a better look. Most beetles and other insects, you know, they lay eggs and then leave their babies to find their own way. Not so for the American burying beetle. The way we raise them here and the way they raise their babies in the wild is they actually need a carrion item. Carrion is a dead animal, usually about the size, you know, of a large, you know, rat or a small bird. And when they find that carrion item, so if an animal dies, these guys have excellent senses of smell. They can smell out that dead animal from a pretty far distance. They fly to that dead animal, and if a male beetle and a female beetle arrive there at the same time, and if they like each other, then they'll decide to bury it together. And they do that by basically digging a hole in the dirt and pushing it down. And as they're doing that, they take the fur and the feathers off of it and preserve this dead animal because they're going to feed their babies with it. What makes them really different from other parents is they then, once they lay eggs, and those eggs hatch out into little grubs, that's what a baby beetle looks like, it's basically a little grub. They will actually take pieces from the meat ball, which it basically becomes like a preserved meatball, and they will hand feed their babies, both mom and dad. They both work together to feed and take care of their babies, cleaning them, making sure they're getting enough food. And then eventually those babies will get big enough that they go off, they dig a little bit deeper, they pupate, which is the transformation that they have to take to go from beetle grub to adult beetle. And then they're able to kind of be out on their own. So we do this here by setting up special buckets that they are able to bury. We use quail that's been raised by a company that raises things for other, other animals to eat, like snakes and other stuff. And then they bury the quail and do the rest of it themselves. We just kind of keep track of things, count how many babies they have, and then when the adults come out, we set them up in their own home with a special number that lets us keep track of them. Now, some of those beetles eventually do end up being released back into our site in Southwest Missouri. That's the really cool thing about this project is that we have been releasing beetles, and we are working towards reestablishing them in the state of Missouri. So that's one big part of our project is monitoring afterwards, whether or not these beetles will be able to live and breed and raise their babies on their own. So like I said, this is it's an endangered species that we are working to save here at the St. Louis Zoo by raising them and eventually releasing them back.
Very cool, Kayla. We have one last question for you. Hannah wanted to know, do you have pill bugs in the Insectarium?
We have lots and lots of pill bugs, yes. We actually do have them on exhibit, so we raise pill bugs so that everyone who comes to visit the Insectarium can see them. But we also have lots of pill bugs that happen to just live kind of on their own in the butterfly bed. Oh, thank you, Glenn. So here's some of our pill bugs that we have right here. They live in pretty big families. You can see there's adults and then smaller ones, which are the babies.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla and Glenn. We really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're so happy to be able to talk to everybody and give you guys a little peek of what we do here in the Insectarium.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Happy Zookeeper Week.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, that was so exciting. Oh my goodness, you guys. Thank you so much. So again, this was our first webinar this week that is celebrating National Zookeeper Week. I want to say happy National Zookeeper Week to all of our zookeepers at the St. Louis Zoo who do an amazing job taking care of all of our animals every single day. I wanted to thank you guys for your questions too. It was really fun to be able to ask keepers questions live. That was awesome. You guys had some great questions. I want to thank you all so much for joining us. Don't forget that the zoo is open. So if you go to STLZOO.org, you can learn more about reserving your free timed reservation. And don't forget your mask. Thank you again for joining me and the amazing keepers at the Insectarium. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.